What's up, guys, and thank you again for joining me for bobK0T0R's Gaming News. Today, as I had said yesterday, I am bringing you my first news video based entirely on the Konami Pre-E3 show conference. So, let's get started, shall we? And starting things right off with the Konami Pre-E3 show conference, they started things off with a quick graphic showing off the Konami code, which I thought was a nice touch. And then they jumped into their mobile and social games, which I didn't exactly think was the best start, considering a lot of the people who are watching this conference most likely aren't that big on the mobile or social gaming scene, but so on and so forth. They then jumped into what was one of their newer initiatives, which is teaming up with many elementary and middle schools to get Dance Dance Revolution Classroom Edition into those same schools' physical education program, which I didn't even know was a thing, so definitely good on Konami for that. And then after that, they jumped into trying to get more independent games published through Konami as well, which I thought was a great idea considering one of the main big outlets right now is mainly just Steam Greenlight, which isn't a bad thing, of course, but this at least gives independent developers some options. And even in the conference itself, Konami had said that the developers can basically do whatever they want with their games. They would just be handling all the publishing needs for it. So that's a pretty good thing to hear as well. Immediately after all those conversations were done and over with, they jumped into Pro Evolution Soccer 2014, which they mainly just talked about the new Fluidity engine, which is going to be showing off a lot of the realistic aspects of the game of soccer and a lot of the actual physical movements and physics on the character to the ball and how the controls will be affected by that as well. It looked very, very cool. Not a game I'm most likely going to get. I'm not exactly the biggest fan of soccer, but still was very cool to see in action. No release dates or gameplay or that kind of thing shown, but again, it still looked pretty good overall. And once Pro Evolution Soccer 2014 had had its piece, they had moved on to what was my favorite portion of the conference, which covered Metal Gear Solid 5: The Phantom Pain. And now, this game looks better and better each time I see it, and this time didn't really disappoint much. The main things they were showing off was the fact that the game takes place in 1984, which means Naked Snake, the main character for this particular one, is 49 years old for those of you following lore. And one of the other big pieces as well was the fact that David Hayter, the main voice actor for Metal Gear, way back in Metal Gear Solid when they first brought in voiceovers, will not be voicing Snake in this iteration. Instead, they're bringing along actor Kiefer Sutherland, which I was very excited to hear considering Kiefer Sutherland's not only been great in his work back on 24, the big TV series on Fox during the mid to early 2000s, but he's just a great actor overall, and he was doing all of the voice work for Naked Snake in this particular game, and which really focused on a lot of their technology work with facial recognition, so that they actually had all these little metal dots poked around Kiefer Sutherland's face as he was doing the voice work, and it really reflected how the characters are going to look while they're talking in the game, as they had showed almost like a side-to-side comparison, if you will, which I thought was really, really good looking. And just as well, with that same thought in mind as far as the facial recognition, they're trying to focus on more expression as opposed to dialogue, which is a huge direction for Metal Gear, considering the fact that, remember, Metal Gear Solid 4 is half-hour-long cutscenes, so I'm very interested to see how much time expression over dialogue really cuts out. One thing I thought was cool as well is they're actually focusing on a lot of open world game design, which when you think back to other Metal Gears, it's mainly a lot of like boxed levels connected to one another, even dating back to Metal Gear on NES. So we'll have to see how that works. But it seems pretty cool overall, and again, the graphics look absurdly well for this game. Some of the things I was disappointed about was the fact that there's no release date announced. There was no mention of whether it's going to be coming out on Xbox One or PlayStation 4. Doubt we're going to get it on PC, so I'm not going to worry about that too much. But overall, the presentation was very well done from Metal Gear in this case. A lot of interviews with Kiefer Sutherland, Hideo Kojima, and a lot of the other developers as well. So good job enough, and hopefully we'll get more info soon. And the last thing they had talked about was the Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2, which I didn't play the first one, so I don't know entirely about the series, beyond the fact that it's Dracula in a modern-day setting, which seems pretty cool nonetheless. But it's also going to be focusing a lot more on the strategic combat of the game, so you're actually having to like break down an enemy's defenses before going in for the final kill, which seems pretty cool, but we'll have to see how it works in practice. But just as well, they're focusing on a lot of a free-roaming camera as opposed to a fixed camera on the character, like in the center of the screen, or stuck cameras in particular locations, which is pretty interesting for that style of game, like a hack and slasher, because I always think back to like God of War or Darksiders, how the camera's either always in a fixed location or it's dead center on the character in the middle of the screen. So we'll have to see how that works as well. They're also doing a lot of work on the music for the game, making sure it's very mood setting, not only for the character, but the environment that you're in. So it's always very good, especially with music work, to be very in-depth like that. It really brings you into a immersive sense of the game. But then lastly, they did say that this was going to be the last of the Lords of Shadow saga, which we'll have to see. A lot of series end up saying that kind of thing and then coming out again and again and again. They did have a release window pop up as well, which was winter. So basically, anytime between like December and February, we should be getting Castlevania Lords of Shadow 2. Looked pretty good overall. I believe the trailer is online now. It's about 10 minutes and a lot of stuff shown off in there. So very interesting watch on that as well. And that was it as far as Konami's pre-E3 show conference goes. A lot shorter than I was expecting, considering I believe last year's was about an hour long. But yet again, we're going to be getting a lot longer conferences with Microsoft, Sony, EA, and Ubisoft. But this one, I felt like Konami was kind of still holding a lot of cards close to their chest as they didn't want to release everything they wanted to talk about. Mainly noticed that due to the fact that there was no real new IPs announced. I mean, last year they at least had Never Dead, which, I mean, obviously that game ended up being a huge flop, but it was still new content nonetheless, as opposed to sequel, sequel, and sequel. So we'll have to see down the line if maybe they actually had more projects in the work that they're just not talking about, or maybe they're just building up towards next gen and gonna blow out the gate then. But I guess we'll have to wait and see.